A very good morning to everyone. Distinguished delegates, participants, and dear faculties, greetings to one and all. It gives me immense warmth and great pleasure to grace all of your presence in this webinar. I want to convey my heartfelt welcome for having you here, uh, Mr. T.R. Srikanth, a global technology executive, for sharing our knowledge with our participants regarding digital transformation in real world. Now, I call upon Dr. S. Kalarani, our head of the Department Information Technology, to give the welcome address.
Thank you, Niroshni. Distinguished delegates and my dear participants, a very good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining our day 5 of our 5-day international conclave on emerging technologies in IT. It's a power-packed webinar series with recent technologies like deep learning, data analysis, computer simulation of nanomaterials for frontier applications, and digital transformations. It gives me immense warmth and great pleasure to grace all of your presence in today's webinar, Digital Transformation. In this glorious moment, I extend my warm wishes on behalf of Department of IT, St. Joseph Institute of Technology. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our chairman, Babu Manoharan sir, our managing director, Mrs. J.C. Priya ma'am, our director, Mr. Sashi Shekhar sir, and our beloved principal, Dr. Ravi Chandran, for giving us the opportunity to host this webinar. I want to convey my heartfelt welcome to Mr. T.R. Srikanth, Strategic Technologies Executive. Mr. T.R. Srikanth completed his master's in Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. He did his MBA in University of Washington. He is a certified professional in data science, inference and modeling, data science probability, data science R basics, data science visualization. He had a versatile experience of more than 2 decades as a senior system engineer, manager, director, CIO, vice president in various leading multinational corporates. His goal is to make things easier, more efficient and effective, and more impactful by applying data and technology to everyday experiences. In this pandemic situation, we are really fortunate to have such a great personality like Srikanth here. Without any further delay, I invite Mr. Srikanth. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you very, very much.
All our participants are waiting for your wonderful session.
Thank you very much. Is now a good time for me to share my screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, you can start sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to share some of my experiences and knowledge with you all. Thank you to Dr. Kalairani and Niroshni for inviting me to speak to you all. Of course, I would have loved to see you all in person, but this is digital transformation. We are talking about digital, so let's do it digitally, right? So it's a good way to start. So with that, I'll get started. I think Dr. Kalairani gave a really good introduction, so I'm going to skim through my introduction really quick. If it will forward. Okay, there we go. Okay, I think I'm going to skim through this. The only part probably I wanted to say about myself is some of my interests outside of academics and technology, when I'm not playing with technology or using technologies, around cooking and photography and sports. So I learn a lot from cooking and photography, sports, and even apply that to my work. That's also where I find a lot of inspiration from various personalities and various things that I learned from there. So I keep an open mind about learning and also enjoying some of those things in addition to my other work experiences. So I have I wouldn't say a packed agenda. I have a decent agenda for you guys, and I definitely want to make sure that I leave some room around the end for questions. I think there is a way to ask questions, and I think it's through the chat. And I'm not very sure. I will probably leave a little bit of breather for Niroshini or Dr. Kalarani to explain how to submit your questions, and we can probably address those questions at the very end. I'll take a little bit of a space there if somebody wants to pitch in and say how people should submit their questions, and then I can continue after that.
So students will be submitting, participants will be submitting your queries in the chat box, YouTube chat box. So at the end of the session, so we just don't want to disturb you at the intermediate. So at the end of the session, all the questions will be answered.
Terrific. Thank you all very much. Okay, with that, we'll get started. Here is the brief agenda I have for today. I have my digital journey. I want to speak about not my entire 25, 30 years of experience. At least I want to speak about my last experience. I did quite a bit of digital transformations there. I want to speak about a little bit about that journey. And from time to time, I've questioned myself: is this digital transformation, or is anything with digital, can it be called digital transformation, or is it optimization? So there are some key differences, and I've also gotten some help from research institutes like Gartner to help me redefine it in my head. So I want to speak a little bit about that and share my experience and some definitions. And I also want to just provoke a little bit and say, what is everybody's role in this transformation? I'm sure there is a collection of students and faculties and everybody here, and many of you are wondering, what is my role? Can I find a role? Do I have to be this or that or the other to find a role in this transformation? I want to unpack some of that for you. Just keep it open, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask questions, and I'll be happy to address at least those questions and share my perspectives. Speak about technology funding. Where is generally funding going these days in terms of what are corporations willing to spend money on? Obviously, when corporations begin to spend money, that also means we need to chase that demand with supply, and that's probably where institutions like yours will come in to produce that kind of supply to meet that demand. So I want to speak a little bit about that technology funding. So you all, it's going to be no news for you, but I just wanted to reinforce some of what I see here. That's also courtesy Gartner. So I want to bring something real based on some sampling study that they have done. And how and where to reimagine, especially in this pandemic situations. What are we learning? How do we reimagine our path forward? That's something I want to talk about. And some hard areas. What are some of the hard areas? I don't think you'll be surprised. Some ideas to pursue. And that's probably something I want to spend a little bit of time on, because I feel very passionate about it. In addition to the hard skills, how do you develop the soft skills? What are some of the learnings from a corporate? It's not like just because we have the experience or we have been practicing digital transformation, there are no learnings, right? There are lots of learnings along the way, and we are all still learning. So what are some of those learnings that I can share with you, and leave some room for questions? That's kind of what I have for you. And based on the agenda in the last 4 days that many of you may have participated in, it seems quite fitting to me just hearing that I'm probably going to bring it all together. I hope I do. And if I don't, I'll attempt to. If I don't, maybe ask some questions, and we'll probably bring it all together for you all. Hope that is okay with you. With that, I'm going to just dive into my presentation. What's my digital journey at Banfield? There is a lot of things that we did. When I describe Banfield is basically a vet services business. It's a veterinary services business where we took care of what's called companion animals, cats and dogs, not cattle or not other animals like horses or other larger animals or smaller exotics. It's just cats and dogs. That's what we focused on. But what we were trying to do is through 1,000 plus hospitals around the country in the US. So we have operations all over the place in the US, and there were 3 important stakeholders for us. One is our associates, our employees that were practicing in the 1,000 hospitals. And as you can imagine, US is very, very large, and it's very spread out. So we need to make sure our associates, even though they are like thousands of miles away from us, they feel connected to us. How do we make sure we take care of their needs? Is a very important criteria for associates as stakeholders. Obviously, customers have a very important part in the success of our business. They are always concerned about accessibility and affordability. How can we use technology to improve accessibility for them and affordability for them? So that's a key thing. And obviously, the unsaid client or a customer is the pets. Now, obviously, we want to give them good quality medicine, good quality care, and make sure they can utilize the care to live life a little bit longer. So those are the three stakeholders. So we were constantly using technology to take care of those stakeholders, if you will. What I did in my department as the CIO and senior VP of IT, functional owner of IT rather, is we changed our organization into what's called product teams. You might be studying in your course and curriculum, or you might have heard about agile processes. How do you break down large projects into smaller products? How do you make sure the business is responsive or your teams are responsive? Instead of saying, okay, I'm building this project, or I'm going to be finishing this project in about 6 months. When a new request or a new change comes in, we go crazy, or we used to go crazy thinking, oh my God, this is going to completely disrupt my project, or I'm not going to take care of that new change. Instead of that, how can you become a little bit more responsive? Is the big premise behind forming these product teams. Make it smaller, make it self-sufficient, so they can be completely productive. And since it is small, everybody is busy all the time, and it's very visible. The busy nature of the project is going to be really visible, and you can break down the project into multiple segments for multiple teams to take care of. In many cases, perform parallel processing. I'm sure you'll be reading about parallel processing from a computing perspective. This is parallel processing with teams and people. So if you can imagine like that, that's kind of what I constructed with people and organization. Of course, with process, what goes behind that when I constructed the product teams was agile processes. I'm not going to get into a big concept of agile and explain agile. Agile is essentially, there is a lot of misconception about agile. There is one misconception or myth that I'd like to break. It's not for speed. If you've heard speed, it's not for speed. It's mainly for responsiveness. And with responsiveness, speed becomes a byproduct. So instead of delivering a big pot of gold, you're going to deliver small coins at a time. Instead of collecting the pot of gold and delivering at the end of 6 months, you're going to continue to deliver those coins of gold as you mint the gold coins. So that's the concept of agile, and be responsive. So at some point, if you're going to be asked to stop distributing gold coins and start distributing silver coins, you will be able to manufacture silver coins if you have the right technologies and skill set, etc., and then start distributing silver coins in that sense. Right? So we also did a lot of hackathons. You must have heard something about hackathons. It's all about having an open mind, creating a space where openness can be valued, and it's essentially create room 2 or 3 days at a time where people can just pursue their ideas and see how far they can go, and maybe not get fixated on one idea. In many cases, I've seen 2 or 3 events come together. They look at each other and say, okay, we need to form a team together because there are lots of synergy. So lots of things come together during hackathons. I've literally seen that 1 + 1 equation turn to 3 instead of a normal 2. So there are lots of things that will come out of hackathons. That's the process I instituted with my team. And it's really important for digital journey, because the speed at which digital is going, there are lots of ideas that can be left untouched if you don't have forums such as hackathons. From a technology perspective, we had an innovation lab, which is essentially a work area where we had all kinds of new equipment. And it is not just closed up. We were actually using it on an everyday basis, where we were having discussions and conversations, and people even did development right there at the innovation labs. Where do these things go? We innovate, but then these things need to see realism. We need to see if it is actually going to work. So we picked a couple of flagship hospitals where we would take everything coming out of hackathons and innovation labs and deploy them at these hospitals. Instead of deploying them to the 1,000 hospitals and not knowing how they would go, we picked flagship hospitals that were close to our facility here. So we could go and deploy them there, get some feedback, fine tune them. In some cases, things didn't work as well as we thought they would. So we brought them back to the lab or to our department, fixed it up and sent it back. So it was very useful to have those flagship hospitals to test our technologies. Of course, we use cloud computing. We were trying to find inflection points and tried to go to the cloud to the extent we could. Of course, we can't turn on a dime, and we can't say we have a fully functional data center that's really built up like a tier one data center. We can't drop all the capital investment and go to cloud computing. More than financial, it's essentially from a technology perspective. Not every technology is going to be completely open to cloud computing. It's not going to work in cloud computing unless you re-architect the solution. So we started re-architecting slowly, and that's why I call it hybrid cloud computing. Certain things were kept on the in the data center, certain things were kept on the cloud, and certain things we actually left at the hospital. So it's a real hybrid solution that we deployed with this technology. And we of course, from a user experience perspective or customer experience perspective, we rolled out mobile apps, we rolled out chat bots, and we rolled out something called a veterinarian chat, where on a Sunday evening when the hospitals are closed, when you need some care, you can use your app and a vet chat engine to have a conversation with a doctor. So that was really useful. I personally used it for my dog 2 or 3 times, because he was a puppy, and we ran into some issues, and we wanted the advice of a doctor instead of going to the internet, because internet has tons and millions of opinions, and if you're not an expert, sometimes you can get really confused with all the opinions. So we give our customers a digital channel through which they can have a conversation even when they are not at the hospitals. So those are the things that I did at Banfield. Just to give you a few examples of digital, and it's not all technology, and the digital technology needs to be supported by processes and further utilized by teams that can actually utilize those processes. So all of these three things, you will see this all the time, the people, process, technology. At least as practitioners, I look at everything, or we all look at everything as people, process, technology. What's the impact of a change on people, process, technology? And that's kind of what I wanted to walk you guys through. So that's my journey with Banfield. Now I'm going to pivot to something about digital transformation versus optimization. There is a lot of things that are said about digital transformation, especially when I talk to different vendors. Since digital transformation is such a catchy word and a buzzword, if I can call it that, everybody wants to talk about digital transformation. Even if they did something small and digital, they want to say, oh, we've completely transformed our business and it's digitally transformed. So I started researching. I talked to several people, and Gartner was a, I don't know if you know Gartner, but Gartner is a research agency headquartered in the US, but then they are fairly global, and they do all of these studies. They have their own industry experts, domain experts, whether it is technology or different domains that they operate in, and they also talk to several producers of technology and practitioners of technology such as myself, and come up with something that is solid and meaningful. The way they talk about digital transformation is like this, like you see in this picture here. You have to recognize your technology in terms of digital core, digital optimization, and digital transformation. I'll explain that a little bit, right? Digital core is, what is your business core? What do you need to have in order for you to transform your business? For example, if you don't have a foundation on the house, you can have the best of paints and you can have the best of sound system and all that, but your media center is not going anywhere if your foundation is shaky. So that's kind of how I look at digital core and the importance of digital core in this foundation, if you will, in this house that is standing. Digital optimization is the one that's most commonly confused with digital transformation. For example, if there is standard work, let's take an example. Somebody takes a phone call. It's a service desk that's taking a phone call. Instead of taking a phone call, it's now, maybe you've seen this in your conversations, it'll be intercepted by a bot, a voice bot of sorts, right? Or some kind of an automation engine that will say, okay, what do you want to talk about? Why are you calling me? Let's say you're calling a supermarket. if they have a system like this, they would say, okay, what do you want to buy? Do you want to return, or do you want to buy? If you want to buy, what do you want to buy? Do you want to buy apparel? Do you want to buy grocery? Do you want to buy medicine? Whatever that is. So a lot of people were confusing digital transformation with digital optimization. If that standard work existed, and if you are essentially automating it, it is not really transformation. The way Gartner likes to define transformation, which resonates with me, I would like to hear how it resonates with you during the question and answer session, is transformation is something that will give you a new source of revenue, brand new source of revenue. Imagine, if you will, I would like to consider digital core as having either net banking capability at a bank or a credit card. That itself is not going to solve your problem, but your digital transformation comes where you're actually buying food through your credit card or net banking, or you're actually selling, let's say your Southern Railways, and you're trying to sell tickets, or your Spice Jet or Jet Airways. Now Jet Airways is gone. I pick any airline example, it's all gone. Kingfisher is gone. So whatever example, British Airways, let's say, you buy a ticket. You can 20 years back, you would have gone to the travel agent, or you would have gone to the British Airways office, and you would have written a check or cut a demand draft or paid cash. All of that is good. Today you would go online, and you would go buy a ticket online, and I'm sure many of you are doing that already, right? But without a net banking system or without a credit card, would you be able to do that? You will not be. You will absolutely not be able to do that. So that's why you need to take care of digital core when you take care of digital transformation. Otherwise, it's what's called here as shiny penny. You would just go for the most shiny object. It's going to glitter, and you'll fall for the glamour of it, but it will not have anything to the core. So you really need to take care of digital core when you take care of digital transformation to the extent that it actually supports your digital transformation. So it's okay for you to start from the top and say, okay, what do you want to do? Where do you want to get that new source of revenue? Suppose you're selling tickets like you used to. You can go to the counter and buy your ticket, or you're a cinema hall. I was recently in Chennai, and I wanted to go watch a movie with my nephew, and they said you can just go online and buy your tickets. And that was like, oh my God, that's awesome. Because back in those days when I grew up in Chennai, I used to go there, and if it's the second day of whatever movie, Nayakan or whatever, you have to pay in black. Somebody is waving a hand at you, and then you're going to pay in black, and of course you're paying cash. So many of those things have changed, and they've changed not just because there is a credit card engine that could take it, but the cinema hall also transformed it. They might have a ticket office still where you can go buy tickets, but if everybody is buying online, and if nobody is buying tickets at the theater, they're going to shut that ticket office down, because why pay the man any money to sell tickets when nobody is coming, right? He might do something else at the cinema hall, for example. So there are a few things that I wanted to call out here between transformation and optimization and digital core. And the more important point there that I don't want you all to lose is digital transformation should lead to brand new revenue, not what you do already, not where you want to go today. For example, many of you might have heard the story of Kodak. Kodak was a camera company that was one of the leaders in film camera. And believe it or not, they were the first ones to actually invent or come up with this idea of digital camera. But they did not pursue it because they thought that technology would completely cannibalize their other technology of films. So they said, okay, let's just keep it quiet. Otherwise, if you put too much energy into that, it's going to kill that stream of revenue. We are already leaders there. Guess what? Somebody else came and killed them. So, but you need to have this balanced approach of going after this transformation and leading to new revenue. And that's really important for keeping the business alive. And in these days of digital technologies, I think most businesses are looking at how to drive digital revenue. And I call it digital revenue and not digital transformation, because it amounts to revenue. It has to amount to new revenue coming through digital. That's how I would define transformation. That's what resonates with me. there is always room for optimization. I constantly have, in the last 15 years, 13 of the 15 years, I used to work for a company called Danaher. They are big into lean manufacturing. Lean basically means remove the waste, but don't wait for perfect. If it is better, just do it. So the mantra there was, don't let perfect in the way of better. So but the optimization is just that story, reliving that story, right? So if you have an opportunity to optimize it. Whether it is digital or not, you might just optimize the process. You might automate something that might already exist. You might, for example, somebody paying fees at the college. They don't. I'm sure. I don't know. It's been a long time since I paid fees. Back in those days, I used to go to my bank in the counter in my university, and then I used to go pay my check or whatever if I had an account right there. I used to pay it and then bring the challan back to the office and said, okay, here is the proof of receipt. Now it's all digital. You don't have to do any of that, right? So that's automating the process. But again, don't forget your core. What's your role? I'm sure I don't know the collection of people here. I'm sure there are educators, there are students here, probably some practitioners, or at least definitely users. We are all users of technology these days. But I look at roles in three segments, right? You can be producers. You can be producers in this digital transformation. You can be a programmer. You can be a quality engineer, because if you're programming at speed, you need to make sure the quality of the product you're producing is top notch. If your quality is not good, nobody is going to buy. So you can be a quality engineer, and there is a lot of automation there also. You're essentially using the same concepts. Instead of producing, you're checking and automating some of those. So I see some of those in the producer category also. And there are data scientists. I add them to the producers, not because they can be programmers and they can do some R and Python and all of those coding. It's because there is a way to monetize data also. There is enough programming going into data, whether it is like Dr. Kalarani talked about previous sessions. It could be in data mining. It could be in artificial intelligence. It could be in machine learning. But all of that amounts to what are you doing with data, and how can you use the data? So that's why I put this broad category of data scientists here. You could have a flavor of data scientists in purists that are practicing data science. For example, I consider myself more of a purist because of my background in statistics. And then my background in computing, I have an intersection there, but I'm more of a purist in a data science way. But there are many of them that are dealing with all kinds of data. So you can be a producer. That's one segment. The second segment is implementer. Yes, these guys have produced it, but in many cases you have to go and implement it. It can be an ERP product somebody has created. These programmers have created, the quality engineers have tested it, it's ready to go, but you still need some tech savvy analysts, because there is still a gap between the producers and the actual users of these products. I can give you a very, very simple example. There are all these complicated phones available these days, whether it is running Android or iOS or any kinds of operating systems for mobile. But I recently bought a phone for my father in India, and he didn't know how to configure it. He went to one of the stores there in Chennai, and there was somebody that actually took all his data from his old BlackBerry and migrated all the data to a local machine there, and then transferred all of that information to the new phone, set it up for him the way he likes it, with all the icons placed wherever he wanted to be placed. So that requires some tech savvy. So you can be an analyst like that. Now, I'm not saying you could be at a store. You could be an analyst in a big way for ERP projects. So the same thing happens, right? There is a software that's being produced. You call it Oracle, SAP, or anything like that, or Salesforce.com, or ServiceNow. And there are users of the solution, but they can't readily use that solution that's being dropped because it's produced for everybody. You need to customize it somewhat to make sure you can use it. So you require tech savvy analysts that can understand and bridge the gap between the users and the producers. So there is an important role there. The implementation experts, they know the ins and outs of the product typically, and they know what the users are asking for, and they know how to talk to these tech savvy analysts. There is a role there for implementation experts to actually convert the bare bone requirement into something that the product can do. It's how you make the product sing and dance to your tune. So there are some implementation experts necessary in the implementer category. And of course, there are, back in my Scrum or Agile ways that I implemented at Banfield and in other places, you need Scrum Masters. That's a discipline in terms of how do you keep all of these guys not overstep on each other. How do you know the drum beat is going okay? It's like any concert. You'll see an orchestrator. You have the violinist. You have the drums. You have the vocalist. You have the guy that's playing the piano. Everybody there. But then how do you make sure who picks up and who leaves off? Yes, everybody has a sheet of music, but you still need an orchestrator to say, okay, you start now. Okay, you have to pick it up now, or you have to slow down. So there is a Scrum Master that's maintaining drum beat. So there is a role for that. And of course, the program managers to make sure all of these projects are coming together properly. The Scrum Masters, in many cases, if there are independent teams, there is a product created typically, and in many cases, where it pulls everything together. So that's the role of a Scrum project program manager, to pull all that together. And there are many such. I'm just giving you a few examples just to pick your brain and keep it going in those directions. And owners, obviously, there are people that don't care about producers. They don't care about how it is done. They just want it done. They are talking about, okay, how do I, for example, this is the cinema hall owner that says, okay, everybody is buying tickets online. I bought my airplane ticket online. Now I'm going to sell my tickets online. So I don't know how to do it. I don't know what it takes, but I know I want to get that done. So after that is done, I want to probably engage with some local restaurant to come and deliver some food at the during the interval or a break or before the movie. So I'm going to do that digitally. So there are many such strategies. Or in business world, where do we go next? What kind of things do we need to do next? What does the 3-year plan look like? Understanding the digital capabilities. You don't have to be a producer or an implementer, but somebody that's very digitally savvy can be a strategist, understanding the capabilities of digital. And a product owner, for example, for many of these teams, agile teams, they need to have a roadmap of capabilities, somebody that prioritizes understanding the strategy and then laying out all of that. So there are product owners there. Of course, there are domain experts, whether it is in terms of specific technologies or specific industries, or a variety of things. There are domain experts all over the place. So and those domain experts also have to be digitally savvy. If they are not digitally capable of producing, they have to be at least digitally savvy to know what can be done. They don't need to know how it can be done. They need to know what can be done. They need to know why this should be done. So there are domain experts that are out there that are very digitally savvy. So I just want to place this in front of you to say, if you're not a programmer, it's not like you can't participate in digital journey. So that's the reason I put this together, to say you can pick your path, and you can pick multiple paths. You can try several things. I grew up as a programmer. I started off in statistics, but I did so much computing, I got drawn into programming, and I left statistics behind for a number of years until recently when I picked up data science. So I became a programmer, but I did programming for 7 out of my 20 whatever years. So later on, I became more of a program manager, and I became a product owner and strategist and domain expert. So I've played in all 3 of these buckets, and some people I know have played in just 1 of these buckets or 2 of these buckets, and maybe I'm not exposing the depth of these buckets, and you can imagine how deep it can go, and you can get really creative with this. The only purpose behind this slide is, in many cases, people think, especially students think, oh my God, if I want to participate in digital transformation, I have to be a coder. You don't need to be. it depends on your skill. If that's your passion, please feel free to pursue that. But if that's not your passion, there are so many other things you all can be participating in. But understanding the basics, you can't give up that programming. Just understand the programming as you go along, but then follow your passion. There are so many areas where you can contribute, and I'm saying that as a practitioner. I want to pivot a little bit to say where, yes, we've talked about these three things, but where is business funding all of these things, right? And this is again thanks to Gartner. As you can tell, they have sampled about 3,000 people, roughly 3,000 people here, of different practitioners to see where they are investing. Essentially, functional heads like myself, we would provide feedback on where is my strategy, where am I investing my budget next year and the next 2 years, etc. So that's kind of how this data is collected. If you see the top part of it where it calls digital transformation, let's focus on that. I'm not going to go line by line through everything, but I want to call out a few things and go quickly on these things. And you all are very familiar with many of these topics. So I'm going to quickly go through these. Business intelligence and data analytics, a lot of people are investing in that. And the reason it's called out in digital transformation is because a lot of these pieces of data are now available. Earlier on, for example, we were only focusing on structured data. If everything is available in rows and columns and tables, we considered it part of business intelligence or basis for business intelligence. But maybe a call center is taking notes in a note column. We didn't have enough capabilities to suck that in or consider unstructured data like that, or a PDF document that's scanned and it's in the system. Is that not information? Absolutely, it is information. How do you suck that in? There is a lot of digital transformation involved in sucking that in and understanding what are the pieces that are important for you versus not. So there is an important piece of digital transformation there. Of course, cyber and information security, with all the payment that's going on over the internet and everything that's happening on the internet, cyber and information security is getting more and more prevalent and more important. Because as sophisticated as we all get with digital transformation, the cyber criminals are getting a little bit more sophisticated also, for all the wrong reasons. But that's happening. So we have a lot of responsibility to protect our digital crown jewels that we create. So cybersecurity has gained a lot of prominence. So that's why those two are on top. And with data privacy and other things coming up, depending on the industry, if you talk about healthcare, there is going to be a lot of HIPAA compliance here in the US. There are lots of different things like personal credit card information for credit card agencies, data privacy for everybody. Especially if you talk to somebody in Europe, the GDPR, the Global Data Privacy Regulation, went to life in 2016, 17. So there are lots of things happening in the privacy segment, and cybersecurity is a very, very broad aspect of that. It includes a lot of things. It's not just antivirus. It's not just perimeter protection. It's a lot of things combined. And I'm not going to go into the details, but that's really important. A lot of people are spending a lot of money into that because they need to protect. The third thing is cloud services and solutions. Of course, like SaaS, which is software as a service, platform as a service. And now there is a lot of information as a service. Everything is going as a service. Imagine, if you will, even GE, General Electric, for example, is selling turbines not as a product, but as a service. And where is that coming from, right? That's the digital portion of their revenue, because there is a lot of machine-to-machine interaction. There is a lot of IoT happening from that machine that's essentially sending messages back to the head office saying how it is performing. So they can promise a level of service for the customer. So they can say, don't worry about buying the product. You just worry about what you want to get out of the product. That's the service we want to provide. We'll take care of the product. Imagine, if you will, instead of buying a car, you're essentially renting and leasing all the time. You can return whenever you want, especially in the case of renting. You can rent it for a day, you can rent it for a week, but they're tracking how you're using it. If you have a little bit of a dent, it's going to show up. They're going to see it. If you have an accident, for example, if there is a system in the car, it calls back and says, hey, this car had an accident. Before you tell them, they know it already. That's how they can maintain the quality of the product that they offer as service. So there are lots of things happening in the service area. The core system improvements and transformations, just like how I pointed out, if you don't have net banking, if you don't have credit cards and a system that processes that, you cannot have a digital transformation exercise going on top of that. So you need to have some core system improvements, the performance of those systems underneath the layers that need to shine through for your digital journey to really take shape. Digital business initiatives, every part of the business is looking at digital business, right? Whether it is digital marketing, for example, earlier on people used to go to trade shows, there used to be conferences people used to attend, and there used to be a lot of money paid for all these trade shows. Now they go to Google, right? There is a lot of marketing shops that don't spend any money on trade shows. They spend a lot of money to go to Google. They get their website completely cleaned up. So it's really easy for anybody coming to the website to find their path. Why do you go to a website? You want to find information. You're either trying to buy something, get awareness about the product. At the end of the day, the marketing department's objective is to make sure they create as much awareness as possible for the product, so they lead you through the journey of buying. So there is a lot of digital transformation involved in that, and the market has gone through tons and tons of changes in this area. Similarly, supply chain, right? You can pick any example. Supply chain. Instead of 20 years back, we used to send purchase orders. We used to say, okay, this material, I want to receive this material in 10 days. I'll ship it. And somebody will say, yes, I received it. I'm shipping it to you day after tomorrow. And somebody else will say, I'm going to deliver it. I'm the courier. I'm going to deliver it. It's all happening over phone calls, or just the handshakes that were happening earlier on, which were more informal. Now with digital, you can place the order. You can click on a button. That button automatically sends the order to your supplier, and the supplier will say, okay, I've acknowledged it. That comes back as another electronic communication to you, and you're kept up to date if you care. And if that's the relationship you have with the supplier, they'll send you information on where they are with production of that material that they're going to send. Has it left the factory? Has it first of all started manufacturing? If they've started manufacturing, where is it in the process? Have they actually shipped it? If they shipped it, what is the tracking number for that? All of that is provided digitally today. So there is a lot of people that are trying to change every aspect of their business into digital. If something is not digital, they want to just change it, and they want to look at different opportunities. Can I keep what I have currently, but also create a digital business out of it? Can I either save cost or get more revenue out of it? So that's kind of a big focus area for a lot of them. Of course, the customer user experience, right? How many of us go and wave cab these days, right? We don't call a taxi these days. We either go to Uber or Ola or something like that, pick up our app, and then say, okay, just pick me up at this particular address. And that user experience is completely digital. We are not paying any cash. Everything is digital in the back. We are hailing the cab digitally. And after we drop off, we even provide feedback. If it's bad feedback, that's being listened to. So the person picking you up is also careful. Of course, there are incidents, and we don't want to get into that, but I'm just talking about the digital experience that's being exposed in the last at least decade. Artificial intelligence and machine learning is such a broad area. There is a lot of investment going in there. The reason you see that at the very end is people are still trying to figure out, how do you get the benefits out of artificial intelligence and machine learning? Especially with machine learning, there is a lot of investment necessary to get there. Imagine if two machines need to talk. It's not only that the machines need to have sensors that send in data, but the data that they send in are going to be so humongous. You're suddenly, instead of getting bytes of data and megabytes and gigabytes, you're getting into petabytes of data that you need to start processing, not just storing. First, you need to worry about storage. Next, you have to worry about processing. And then as you process it, what are you learning from that? So there not a lot of companies can really utilize it. So people are still trying to figure out what can they get out of artificial intelligence, and how can you trust a machine making a decision? For example, this is a common example that's been brought up, and I'm not cooking this up. If you have an automated car running, it's using artificial intelligence to say, okay, where is the road? Sorry, was there a question? Okay. So if you have a car that's going and it's using artificial intelligence and all the machine learning to make sure it's reading the lanes properly, it's reading where you need to go, what is the direction. So it's reading a map in the back. All of that is fine. But if there is ever a situation where they need to, there is some blockade in front. If there is a car in front and a lamppost in front, and you need to hit one of those, how does it decide which one to hit? So those are things we need to teach, and it's constant learning. And when it hits something, we need to also understand what kind of algorithm was running in the back that made it hit this. It's not just by chance. It doesn't pick one or the other based on which order it comes from. What is it using? That's called explainable artificial intelligence. There is a lot of research going on in explainable artificial intelligence. If you guys want to listen to some Davos conferences, it's all available on YouTube. There are some great lectures and conversations by people like Sundar Pichai and others. They've spoken about artificial intelligence and explainable artificial intelligence. So these are the areas where there is a lot of investment going, either as a producer or as a consumer. Even if there is a little less investment going into artificial intelligence as consumers and practitioners, a lot of products are putting a lot of emphasis and money into artificial intelligence. So with that, I want to move on to the next slide. How am I doing on time? Okay. So this is a time to reimagine. With digital transformation, how do we reimagine? There are ways to reimagine your customer experience, right? So if just imagine in this pandemic situation with COVID, there are lots of people that are trying to still provide that customer experience. How can you go buy grocery? Here we have something called an Instacart. If you can't go to the grocery shop to pick up your regular milk, bread, and everything else you want to pick up, you can go to Instacart, and Instacart will essentially interface with the grocery chain, and they will come drop it off. And there are now places, grocery chains, that are trying to have a digital experience where you can buy the product and they will pick up those products. It's traditional. Somebody inside a Walmart or a big shop will go pick all the products that you want to buy. And as soon as you arrive at the store, you can just click on a button saying I've arrived, and they'll come and load it in the back of your car. They can do that. But what's important there with the customer experience is, are they picking the same way you would pick? Suppose I go and pick tomatoes. I'm really careful. Out of the thousands of tomatoes that are available, I'm going to pick my 20, and I'm going to pick up the ones that are really good. So if the guys that are picking for me on my behalf, sorry, I'm losing my throat. If the guy's picking for me, once in a while, if they make a mistake, we all say, yeah, it's human to make a mistake. That's okay. But if constantly you see things that are not picked for you right, or your customer experience is not delightful, you're going to really not like that customer journey. You're going to lose that, the company is going to lose a customer. So customer experience is really key, not just the digital customer experience, but what is behind that digital customer experience in terms of core service that you need to provide to make sure the digital experience stands okay and it stands tall in front of everything and in front of your competitor. So customer experience is really key. And a lot of people are trying to reimagine the customer experience, especially in the service space. If it is just a question of buying something in this digital economy, we are all okay with buying something. But imagine if you want to go buy something that you have to try on, or if you haven't seen this example, go look up Warby Parker. It's WARBY space Parker, PARKER. It's an eyeglass company. they have created an engine where you can take a picture and they let you try as many glasses as possible on an app. So if you say, okay, that frame, you can look at it yourself and it'll show you how you will look in that particular frame of glass. So it is fantastic. You don't have to go into a store, and they created this digital experience in such a way that you can completely replace an analog experience or a physical experience, even though it is a service where you traditionally tried something on. And there are lots of research going into how can you provide some of these things. Of course, in regulated industries like healthcare, it's carefully constructed, because even for us, when we had vet chat at Banfield, even when we were treating companion animals, without seeing the animal, we could not prescribe any medicine. We can just say, is it looking okay? Is it critical? Do you need to run to an emergency center, or can you wait till next morning? So there are some regulations there, but for places or companies and industries that are not restricted and subjected to any kind of regulations, you can absolutely extend this to absolute infinity. And there are several examples like this from a customer experience perspective. I mean, even in the case of educators, right? We are all trying to figure out how do we educate ourselves? How do we continue this learning in this time of pandemic? How can we provide lectures? How can you share the curriculum and still make sure the customers, in this case the students, are actually picking up the knowledge? If they're sitting in your class, you can easily figure out whether a student got the concept or not, but by the way he or she looks at you. Or if they are lost, you can say, hey, are you lost? Can I help you? But if they're sitting at home and you don't see them, or even if you have like 40 students on web camera, you can't pick up some of those things. But you have to find a way to see how do you engage. Can you allow some kinds of questions, answers, to see who got it, who didn't get it? So there are multiple ways people are trying some of these things, even in areas like education, where the customer experience is paramount. And in this situation, we are all looking for alternatives. It's not like we have a lot of alternatives. So we are looking at digital ways of delivering some of these things that are delivered traditionally, in traditional ways. The next thing I want to talk about is ways of working, right? Our ways of working will have to change. We are, in a lot of cases, me included, in a lot of industries, we are all used to somebody being right next to you when you're either producing with them or delivering something to them, if you're in a service industry. Those things are changing. You don't know who's sitting right next to you. You probably will not. I'm saying in general, in a very generic sense, we will not get to see a lot of them face to face. We are going to get to know people through chats and video and all that. You better get used to some of that. But another thing that you need to take care of is, what I feel and what I see is, if you're sitting in front of your computer the entire day, it can be really tiring. These digital ways are not necessarily all the time healthy. So you also need to take care of your health. You need to take your walks during the day. You need to leave the room for a little bit. You need to shut off your video for a little bit. You have to reduce your screen time where you can. So there are certain things we need to get used to balance the new ways of working that are being, if I can say that, forced upon us. But these new ways of working are also going to allow us the flexibility, a lot of flexibility actually, that we didn't have earlier. For example, you're now putting two students, one student traveling 2 hours to get to the college, compared to the person that lives next door to the college. That person has so much more time to spend on whatever they want to do, whether it's a research project or study more or go play more, follow some extracurricular passions. So now it's actually flattening that for the students. Imagine that in terms of ways of working. Imagine what it provides you, the goodness it provides you, and how are you utilizing all that is something that's up to all of us. So that's important to consider. The next thing, I already brought it up, so I'm not going to dive into it too much, is core business processes, about how we can change supply chain, how we can change service delivery, how can we change marketing. So all of those things are going to go through some core business process changes, especially in these times when, in many cases, people are being forced to think of new ways of doing business. What do these things amount to, right? What are some of the technologies that help us with all of these things? The people that are coming out successful these days are people that are following agile processes, agility, utilize collaboration, utilize elastic computing, because you can't always have everything that you need at your fingertips. So there are people that are doing it for you. Utilize them at Azure or Amazon Web Services, or more popularly called AWS or GCP or anything like that. That will all lead you to the new normal, right? Some of the hot areas that I see, and I'm sure you will agree with many of these things. Artificial intelligence, of course, is still, it continues to be hot. There's a lot of research going in. Machine learning continues to be hot. Internet of Things or machine to machine, it used to be very interchangeable, but IoT is the concept that sticks now. The Internet of Things, where machines can talk to each other, or with a human being, that can further take that data that the machine is providing to do a lot of different things. For example, your Fitbit or your watch that is electronic, that tells you what's your heart rate, how many miles have you walked. In some cases, it even tells you you've been sitting for too long, it's time to get up, it's time to blink your eyes. So how is all that possible? It's the machine talking to you in this case and giving you some predictions, and that leads me to data insights, right? uh, Data insights is something that is not well, it's kind of understood, but a lot of people are still focusing on it as business intelligence. If we have to look beyond business intelligence, as many of us have called it, we need to go from descriptive analytics to prescriptive analytics to predictive analytics, right? Instead of saying, okay, in the past 15 days it's been raining, that's great, that's not weather forecast, that's just telling you what happened in the last 15 days, that's great. To predictive analytics, to say, okay, it's going to rain, and meteorologists or somewhat, they're all using time series analysis and all good concepts, but in many cases they are able to predict a few things with certain level of confidence. But after they predict, what do you do? And that's where the prediction comes in. If you're just a local consumer, you can just carry an umbrella and run. But if you're a farmer that's expecting a huge rainfall the next day and it's time to harvest, you probably will have to harvest a little bit early. What are the engines that can actually not just predict but can go to prescription level? So, or in this case of a watch, it's useful to say, okay, you've been sitting down for 8 hours. Great. What is the prescription? You need to stand up. You've been staring into the screen for 6 hours. What is the prescription? You need to start blinking more. So I think that there is a lot of emphasis now, and there is a lot of value in prescriptive analytics. Of course, when the machine prescribes something, as humans, we always think, I know better. But then that's where all the engines, artificial intelligence, and all the predictive algorithms and all that need to come together and be better. And actually, we all need to trust it a little bit more and see where it goes. So there is a lot of research going on in this subject of prescriptive analytics. Robotic process automation is essentially automation, but what used to be standard work and somebody doing by pen and paper is done through robots. Whether it is a chatbot trying to answer questions, whether you're trying to, for example, activate a phone that you purchased. So if you go to a website and say, okay, what is my IMEI number? You key in the IMEI number. What is your phone serial number? Okay, phone serial number. What is the SIM card number? Okay, it ties all that together. And then if there is a bot sitting in the back asking you all these questions because the standard work is set up, that's robotic process automation. Or another example that we see is invoices, right? Or invoices typically is where we see invoices being sent by the suppliers that you need to pay. The invoices come in the form of, let's say, paper, where they're not able to send in electronic format. It comes in, you scan that. As part of scanning, it actually understands the format of the invoice and plucks all the information from different parts of the paper and dumps it into a database. And whether you're running whatever ERP system you're running, it dumps it there and it processes automatically. Just a simple scan will enable all that. In the earlier days, what used to happen was it will come in, somebody is going to, a data entry operator is going to key in all the information and it's going to go through processing. So it's some kind of a robotic process automation. Digital experiences, we talked about digital experiences quite a bit. Cyber security, we spoke about that. Voice is something that's picking up a lot. What can you do with voice? Whether it is Echo Dot or a Siri or anything like that, how can you speak to a computer, to something, to say, play this music, make this meeting appointment for me with somebody, or remind me tomorrow, or wake me up at 6 a.m. in the morning. Those are all easy things. The one thing, just a use case that we were talking about was in our hospitals, our doctors were talking to patients and typing up right after the patient leaves. They're typing up all the notes that goes in the system. What we were looking at was for the doctors to speak into a microphone, and that will automatically, in real time, go through several engines, which will understand that voice, understand what the doctor is trying to say, and then just transcribe the whole thing in that exact same area. So it saves so much time and effort for the doctor, and it's real time. In many cases, if they are talking to the patient and also trying to type up, they're not paying complete attention to the patient, and sometimes it can be annoying. As important as taking notes is, and it's only for the benefit of the patients, sometimes it's very annoying to the patient. This voice can relieve them of that effort also, to say, okay, you're just talking, the microphone is listening and actually transcribing and dumping into a database where it's saved and used for further processing later on. So there are lots of uses, and voice is coming in a very, very big way in lots of different areas where machines will essentially understand what you're saying. And you can probably speak to a microwave and say, okay, and maybe it's still, in many cases it exists. You can say, okay, cook me this thing, and then it'll cook. And there are refrigerators available where it understands what's inside it, and it'll suggest a particular meal plan for you based on what you already have inside. So and it'll tell you what to do, or you can ask them, okay, what are my options, and it'll speak to you. So there are lots of things that are now being researched and coming into force, and you guys need to pay attention to some of those. So those are some of the hard areas from a technology perspective. But I also don't want to leave out some of the soft skills that are absolutely critical as you go into this. The one, I'll go through this one by one. I spoke about agile and extreme programming, and there are full stack programming techniques and all that. I'm not saying you need to be a master at everything, but learn some of these things, know what these things are, because when you finish this course and go for a job interview, or you want to do a research in this particular subject, or you want to come up with the next new agile, next new something else, to understand what is there in current practice is going to be important in terms of processes. Problem solving. I say problem solving because in many cases, technologists, and I've been a technologist, so I can say this very comfortably, practitioners and technologists will just think of an idea and think they've solved the problem. You need to really apply empathy and understand what the user or a customer wants. If you don't understand that, you're not solving anything. If my marketing professor used to say, if there are two guests you have, one wants hot tea and the other wants iced tea, and you're just lazy, so you serve them warm tea to both, you've essentially upset both of your guests. Instead, you serve just hot tea to both, you've just upset one person. One person is super happy. But you really need to understand what your customer or your guest or your user wants. Without understanding that, technology has no place. Just walking around with technology is like walking around with hammer, and every problem will look like a nail. So problem solving is really, really critical for anybody, and especially technologists, because sometimes we all can get overly consumed with the technology instead of understanding the user problem. So you really need to understand that. And as Steve Jobs, who's the founder of Apple, many of you know, all of you know maybe, used to say, the magic is created with technology and humanities coming together. If it is just technology, it's not magic. It's just one hand clapping. The clap creates a nice sound only when two hands come together, and two hands will be humanities and technology together. That's how problems are solved. So place some emphasis on problem solving. Logical reasoning is really key. And I see this in many cases, people coming out as programmers. uh, you you all need to understand, I don't know, maybe you do if you're in the first year of your course. Put some emphasis on logical reasoning. If you're able to put pen and paper to a process to say what happens next, who's the supplier, who's the consumer, what's the input, what's the output, what's the process in between, if you're able to see that in that logical fashion, programming is just a tool. You can get to programming today. I mean, when I was coding, I started coding in Fortran, and then later on I moved to C, and then came object-oriented programming with C++ and C Sharp and what have you now, right? So now people are talking about low-code programming, where you don't have to write code, but you still write code. So all of these things are coming, but you need to have logical reasoning to utilize what's available from a technology perspective. So that's really key from a soft skill perspective. I would also encourage, especially for educators here, to have application enforced academics, meaning where are these things used, and that's really important for students to understand. I say this because when I recruit interns, they are excellent technologists, but they don't know where to apply the technology. So I've said this to many students that come and intern with us, and I've said this to many educators that I interact with. So I want to mention that if you guys do it, that's excellent. If you don't do it, please consider it. And it's going to be super useful as you create more research scholars and even more academicians and more application programmers, or what have you. Whatever you create, whoever you create, it's going to be super useful to understand application along with the academic backing. I already spoke about the tech intersection with your interest in terms of humanities and technology coming together. This is another stab at it to say, if you're interested in something outside of technology, and if you have the technology, see how you can apply it together. Suppose you're interested in music, and you're interested in technology, see how you can create digitally something. For example, I listened to a Rolling Stones concert, or I listened to a lot of things produced today, but the musicians are sitting in so many different places. There's a program conducted by somebody on YouTube. It's during COVID, and they played all kinds of melodies that I grew up with, whether it is MS Vishwanathan melodies or Ilayaraja melodies or A.R. Rahman melodies. And these musicians were all sitting in different places. A person is singing from his or her home. The tabla master is playing from his or her veranda, or his top floor, wherever he is. And there are so many people coming in, but there are technologists in the back that are doing sound mixing and sound engineering and bringing all that together to create music for people like us. So the reason I give that example is there is technology involved everywhere, and find your interest and then merge your technology with your interest to create magic. And I would go into everything with a learning mindset. Keep it open. It may not be your favorite subject, it might not be the thing that you want to do, but then learn it. If you don't know it, learn it. I would encourage everybody to go with open arms and open brain and open everything, open hearts to learn everything. And that will create a growth mindset, because there is learning in everything. If you don't know it, there is nobody that knows everything. And I have an old Tamil proverb. I don't know how many people here are Tamil, so I'll skip that. Or rather, it goes "Katrathu kaiman alavu, kalladhathu ulagalavu." So it basically means what you've learned is just a handful. What you haven't learned is as big as the world. So I go in with that attitude and deal with ambiguity. The people that we are all creating, or when I have my teenage son, what I tell him is the professions are opening up that we don't have any clue to. In 10 years, what's going to be available, we don't know. But then what we do know is we can quickly learn and we can deal with it. We can deal with the ambiguity, knowing fully well that we don't know. We know we can deal with it. That's a strength you need to build in terms of soft skills. And value and encourage creativity. It might be a creative idea, may not apply to what you're doing immediately, but then don't completely shut it off. Put that away maybe for the time being, and then play with it. Find some time to play with it in your own way. have your discussions and engage in conversations and see if you can nurture that creativity. That's going to be super useful. And this is the last point, but it's definitely not the least point. We need to communicate. Communication is a very, very key skill, especially for technologists, because sometimes I see technologists able to talk to or communicate with machines so beautifully. But if you ask them what they're doing or how they are doing, they struggle, stutter, and stammer. And the people that are able to communicate are the ones that are creating magic, selling those ideas, and then enhancing those ideas beautifully out in the community. So put a lot of emphasis on communication. That's going to be really important, whether you're explaining your research paper, you're defending your thesis, or you're attending a job interview, or you're talking to your next door neighbor, or you're talking to somebody, a budding technologist. Communication is going to be key. So I would put a lot of emphasis on that. With that, I think we are almost at time. So I would share some learnings, and I'll skim through this really fast because I want to allow some time for questions. Sorry if I said training. Some questions. Scenario planning is key. It's good to understand for us, especially practitioners. It was good for all of us to understand, and it's still good to understand what are the different scenarios that will play out in front of us. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if the economy doesn't open up in a month? What if everybody continues to work from home for the next 5 years? So there are lots of these scenarios you need to play with, and not that every scenario will play out like that, but if you have at least 3 or 4 scenarios, when a fourth scenario comes up, which is essentially something that you hadn't imagined, at least you can use the scenarios that you had and see what combination of that will work for the fourth. Or even if it doesn't apply, at least you're thinking of scenario planning. So this will be one more scenario you'll be planning for. Your muscle is already built for scenario planning in that case. So that's really important. That's a learning for all of us. And I share this as a learning from many of our practitioners. Focus on the core, which is going to be the key for your digital initiatives. Not just look at the shiny penny. Can you scale? If this goes humongous, if, for example, if I said, I'm going to sell something on my website, but my website is sitting on a small PC, suddenly if there is a lot of traffic, it's going to completely shut down your website. So you need to focus on the core and see what is actually powering your website, for example, in this case. So focus on the core as much as you're focusing on the digital initiatives. So it'll serve you well. What I'm also seeing and hearing is digital is really high on every CEO's agenda. And they want to spend the money, the right kind of money, to create new forays, new sources of revenue through digital. But as technologists, we all need to learn to storytell and build your case. Because that's where communication comes in. It's not easy to storytell. It's not easy to explain technology to somebody that doesn't get technology, or somebody that does not want to understand technology. They just care about making money. So you need to talk, you need to understand those terms and talk in those terms. And hiring will never be the same. Today, because of working from home, how does it matter whether the person producing or collaborating with me is sitting right next to me in an office or sitting thousands of miles away? As long as I can digitally tap him or her on the shoulder and start talking to him or her and producing something. So it gives us more options as we start hiring. We are not going to be isolated or restricted to, okay, is this person able to come and join me in my office? So some of those things will have to be thought through clearly with options that are left on the table. So with that, I am going to open it up to questions. Sorry if I took some extra time on some of these things, but I'm open to questions, and I can go a few minutes over if you guys are available.
Yes, sir. We have a few questions, sir. One.
Morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you, Srikanth, sir, for your wonderful and insightful presentation, sir. We have a feedback from our participants. The session was very informative and very enlightened, sir. So, and most of the very good. And sir, we have a question here.
Yeah.
What are the security threats while transferring digital data?
there are three types of threats, right? Digital data, you first have to make sure your digital data is secure where it is, both ends, right? Source and destination, because and in transit. So you have to take care of all of those things. If you talk about one or the other, right, it is still your data that you're sending over. Let's say it is what do you call it? Let's say it is personal data. You're sending your social security info or Aadhaar card, whatever information, along with your first name, last name, etc. You're going to send it over. You first need to make sure somebody is not attacking you where you are and then grabbing that data, whether it is in the form of a virus or anything in a personal computer space, or if it's a big server. You need to protect it with enough firewall and perimeters and all that to make sure everything is safe. It's not enough if it is safe there. While it is traveling, it shouldn't be attacked. So you need to make sure it is encrypted properly while it is traveling. And after it lands, you need to make sure where you're sending is equally secure, because it's still your data. So you need to make sure that is secure where it is sending. So there is, if you in digital commerce, we talk a lot about who you want to participate with. You want to make sure your data is going to be kept as secure, if not better, on the other side as well.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And we have also another question: how we can keep away from these cyber threats?
You know, I don't know who I'm quoting, but I saw this and it actually was very enlightening. We cannot get away. I mean, let's be real. Right? Unless you say, I'm not going to use the internet, I'm not going to use my mobile phone, I'm not going to use a computer, you can't get away. You can write on pen and paper, and then you can start trading in hard currencies, and you can go pick up stuff from someplace. We are not there. We are way more advanced in terms of digital economy, and the hackers are way more advanced also. Unfortunately, they're extremely skilled. Their brains are slightly in a different place and wish they were not. But the threats always exist. So the one thing that we suggest is assume attack. Don't ever think nobody is attacking you, nobody is watching you. Assume attack. And that's why we have things that we are practicing called zero trust. So when we deploy cybersecurity policies, we deploy zero trust. I won't get into zero trust. You can read up on zero trust. But the two basic philosophies between zero trust is: do you know who is talking, who is the person that is talking, and do you know which device they're talking from? If you trust both, then you get in. For example, that's where the multi-factor authentication and all of those things come in. So to really answer that question, don't trust.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. And also another question, sir: how helpful will be the digital transformation?
How helpful? It is already helpful. I'm not there. If this digital medium had not been there to make this effort, just imagine, right? First of all, I wouldn't have made this, because for this spending 2 hours, which I loved, but for spending 2 hours, I have to fly 36 hours, deal with jet lag, and be awake for this presentation, and maybe visit my family also for a week, come back another 25 or 30 hours and be jet lag for a couple of days, and then be productive. What am I going to do? I'm going to pick up my cup of coffee, talk to you for 2 hours, and go and sleep, or watch a movie and sleep, right? So that's digital. Why should we get away? We just have to be careful. This is beautiful, and we should utilize every aspect of digital that's available to us.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. The last question, sir: what is the scope of cyber security in the future?
Cybersecurity, there is a huge amount of scope in cybersecurity, because as more and more devices, so imagine in the past, if you just look at the maturity curves a little bit, right? In the past, we were all using personal computers. So the personal computers were the places where people were easily attacking you. Hence, we developed antiviruses. And slowly they found out, maybe if with enough sophistication, we can actually attack some enterprises. So they started attacking enterprises. Now the enterprises all started having good perimeters. And in many cases, they are building their firewalls and all of the other technologies and all that. Imagine if we are talking about machine to machine. Machines are going to automatically talk to each other. There are lots of things now available. For example, the deep fake, or where somebody can say whatever they want to say, and with artificial intelligence, this is where all the intelligence and technologies are not being used properly. They can use artificial intelligence to make it sound like Donald Trump, and they can put a picture of Donald Trump and use Donald Trump's voice from completely different videos, pull it all together, and then essentially your pros make that voice transcribe your thing and then speak that language. So that's how dangerous it is today. So behind all of this, somebody is always working to make sure these things are not happening. How do you shut it off? So there are 3 stages in this. First of all is protect. Identify any threats and then remediate, react and remediate. Actually 4 stages. Protect, to do whatever you can to protect your current. And then when something happens, it's not about if. I didn't say if, I carefully chose my word. When something happens, because it's bound to happen, you identify it as quickly as possible. That's where you can use a lot of machine language and all that, to do machine learning rather, to understand abnormalities, right? What is normal behavior for my machines? What's abnormal? So if it is abnormal, why is it abnormal? Where is that abnormality coming from? Can I kill that? And all of these steps, can it be done quickly? So that's the identification and reacting. And after I react, how do I remediate it? How do I not allow the same thing to happen tomorrow to something else? So I should never be attacked the same way again, ever. So maybe there will be some other new attack, and I'll get to the same cycle of identification and reaction. But this is where the concepts of problem solving also come in, to say, what is the problem? What is the root cause of the problem? And how am I going to solve it with technologies or processes, etc. So this is going to be super critical. It's going to be more and more critical. I don't want to get into salaries and things like that, but just to give you a sense, cyber security professionals are in high demand these days. The good ones are really in high demand. And cyber security professionals they have several different hats. There are analysts, cyber security analysts. Then there are forensic analysts. Then there are threat protection people. There are lots of even subsects inside cybersecurity, and it's one of the busiest fields right now, and there is a lot of catch up for all of us to do. So if you're interested in cybersecurity, and if you're passionate about that, you're on a great path. So whoever asked the question.
So thank you very much, sir. We got a clear insight on digital transformation and its future, sir. So I kindly call upon Mrs. Niroshni Infantia to deliver the vote of thanks.
It is a pleasant duty to propose a vote of thanks first. I extend my most sincere thanks to the Almighty. On behalf of the Department of Information Technology of St. Joseph's Institute of Technology, to all the participants who have attended this webinar, I would also like to thank our patrons, Dr. B. Babu Manoharan sir, our chairman, St. Joseph's Group of Institutions, our managing director, Mrs. B. Jessipriya ma'am, our director, Mr. B. Sasishekhar sir, and our beloved principal, Dr. B. Ravichandran sir, who have motivated and encouraged us to organize this webinar series. On my own behalf, I express my hearty vote of thanks to Mr. T.R. Srikanth for sparing his valuable time this morning with us and for making an excellent presentation and making this webinar series an interesting and meaningful one, who has took a valuable time out of his busy schedule. I hope all the students would have benefited from all the real-time examples you told us, sir. Thank you, dear faculty, students, and researchers for showing their interest in this program, for taking the time to join the Day 5 webinar on digital transformation. Last but not the least, my sincere gratitude to our head of the department, Dr. S. Kalarani, Staff and Student Affairs, and Dr. R. Priscilla, Lab Affairs, for your support and guidance in the organization of this event. And I thank you all, the team members as well. Once again, I thank very much all the participants who have shown your involvement and the willingness to join with us all the 5 days of the International Conclave on Emerging Technologies in Information Technology. You have made this webinar series a great success. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a
Thank you,
nice
sir.
day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Sure.
you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye
sir.
all.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. Thank you. You're welcome.